All right, let's get into a debate here. A transgender inmate transferred to a women's prison after claiming years of abuse in an all-male facility. A federal court ruled in favor of Dion Strawberry Hampton, who's serving a 10-year sentence for burglary in Illinois. Now, could this case set a precedent all around the country? Joining us now to discuss is the president of the Corrections Benevolent Association, Elias Husamudeen, and former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney, Vanu Vargas. Good to see both of you.
Good to see you, sir.
Elias, as someone who represents the corrections officers, tell me why you believe this is a threat for you.
Well, I think that it's important that everybody watching understand that you cannot marginalize safety. You can't marginalize safety, and it appears that everybody that has anything that's talking about jail reform and prison reform wants to take safety and put safety on the back seat and put everything else up front. We have to be realistic that inside jail, we have crime. There's sexual assault and things that go on inside jail, so we can't just...
Okay, I get that, but please tell me specifically then, in this case, as I understand it, Strawberry Hampton is going from a man to a woman. Why is that a threat to corrections officers?
Well, because... Example, on Rikers Island in New York City jails, we already house transgender inmates. They already housed in a female jail. And the safety issue becomes that we have to protect, again, like I said, we have to protect the other inmates because, again, sexual assault and things happen. This person is in jail for committing a crime, not for being a transgender. Unfortunately, what's going on now in this country is that everybody's dealing with this jail reform and nobody wants to talk about safety, the safety of the inmates, the safety of the correction officers who are also sexually assaulted by inmates. So it is a safety issue, and we can't marginalize.
Give Vanu a chance to respond. Go ahead.
Well, I think the first thing here, this case actually was about safety. This woman who is transgender was treated horrifically within prison, subjected to all sorts of abuse by other prisoners and by corrections staff. And these claims were found to be substantiated by independent reviews. I mean, horrible, horrible things that were going on. And she had been transferred a couple times to different male prisons. Ultimately, the decision came down and the judge didn't order this prisoner moved, but actually wanted her to get some counseling while she was in segregation. But the speed at which they moved her, you'd think this was the Bill Clinton administration, and the secret way they did it, it was don't ask, don't tell, right? Well, because it was done in secret in response, even though the judge didn't order the transfer. So, you know, Illinois has a terrible history. So you got to look at what Illinois has done, and the corrections chief is talking about safety. But at this evidentiary hearing that this judge conducted, there was no evidence presented that putting a transgender woman into a women's prison would pose any greater threat to the women in the facility.
So, Elias, answer that, because you claimed this was a safety issue at the top, and now you're hearing from Vanu that in some of the details of the case, this person who was a man becoming a woman was being sexually abused more by men, and was actually, than other inmates perhaps, number one, and number two, was actually being assaulted, abused by corrections officers. I give you a chance to respond.
Well, I can't respond to what's going on in Illinois, but I can tell you what's going on here in New York City, and that's not an issue. Correction officers are not being accused of these type of things. Like I said before, we already have these inmates in with the other female inmates, and it is, I don't mean to be repetitive, it is an issue of safety because we have to keep the other inmates safe. The one quick thing is this, listen, what's going on now in the in the jail system, in the prison system, correction officers, we're like the superhero of law enforcement all of a sudden, because Rikers Island have 40% mentally ill inmates who are mentally ill. We are there and we're doing mental health work. We have juveniles who are now, we are now doing counseling, juvenile counseling.
Listen,
so you're dealing with a lot, I get it. Vanu, you make the last point. What does this mean for prisons across the country, Vanu? Last point.
Well, it means that
the issue is actually going to come up before the U.S. Supreme Court of what rights do transgenders have in the military ban. It's being heard in D.C. and being heard in the Ninth Circuit in California. It looks like it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Trump administration has asked it to go to the Supreme Court. But in this case, the Illinois Department of Corrections didn't make the argument to compare this woman to other transgenders, but because it was a sex discrimination case, that's why the Illinois Department of Corrections lost. So in terms of precedent, ultimately, I think this will be before the U.S. Supreme Court.
It will go to the High Court. All right, Vanu, Elias, we appreciate you both coming in.